Why follow a single letter of the year and not move from house to house out of convenience? This message is not born to impose criteria, to discredit other paths, or to declare absolute truths. It is born from experience, observation, time, mistakes made, lessons learned, and the spiritual responsibility to explain why so many people, as the years go by, end up asking themselves, why did this happen to me? Why, if I was doing everything right, did everything fall apart? Why did I enter a house and then my life began to fall into disorder? And the answer, although it is not always the only one, often begins right here. There are many letters of the year because there are many houses, associations, lineages, geographic contexts, and different spiritual realities. This is not an error nor a contradiction. In Ifa and in Osha, the plurality of recognized houses, national associations, and international associations has always existed. The Yoruba Association of Cuba, for example, issues its letter. There are also letters issued in Miami and in other countries, and there are respected religious houses that draw their own letters. All of them exist because they speak from their own space, their own energy, and their own territory. The problem is not that many letters exist. The problem begins when a person decides to follow one letter and then, out of convenience, fear, the desire to hear only what is positive, or economic interest, begins to jump from one house to another, from one letter to another, seeking only what is convenient to hear. At that moment, the person stops walking spiritually and begins to negotiate with their own ego. A letter of the year is not just a piece of paper, nor a list of advice, nor an announcement of prosperity or difficulty. A letter of the year is an energetic field. From the moment a person decides to follow a letter, they begin to work, consciously or unconsciously, with that energy. They accept its warnings, its prohibitions, its care, its cleansings, and its recommendations. That field begins to interact with their spiritual frame, their environment, their destiny, and their decisions. When that person, already clothed in an energy, decides to change houses seeking only what is positive, comfortable, or profitable, they are not erasing the previous energy. Energy is not erased. It overlaps. It accumulates. It crosses. And that is where imbalances begin. Because the original house may have warned of dangers, ruptures, losses, or conflicts, and instead of facing those warnings responsibly, the person seeks another house that tells them what they want to hear. The problem is that dangers do not disappear by being ignored. They simply arrive without warning. That is why so many cases are seen of people who say, "But that other house never spoke about what happened to me." Of course it did not, because it was not the house with which the journey began. The energy that was first activated was another. And when events occur, the person realizes too late that the warning was there from the very beginning. In Palo, there are no letters of the year. In Palo, there are predictions, premonitions, and direct readings of the foundation. This is important to clarify. In Ganguleros do not draw letters, they interpret processes, movements, and spiritual signs. These are different planes that should not be confused. But even in Palo, the principle is the same. One cannot jump from foundation to foundation seeking only convenience, because the spiritual field becomes fragmented. There are spiritual houses that have the strength, coherence, and magnetic energy necessary to sustain those who enter them. These are houses where people, even when facing difficult processes, come out with clarity, learning, and stability, not because everything is easy, but because there is a firm energy that sustains, corrects, and protects. And there are also people who pass through these houses, remain for a time, and then leave because they do not resonate with the way things are spoken, with the discipline, the ethics, or the limits. This too is part of the human process. When a person enters a spiritual house and later leaves out of arrogance, dissatisfaction, or interest, they are not judged. Everyone walks their own process. But it cannot be denied that this coming and going leaves marks, spiritual marks that are not always visible, but are deeply felt. There are marks that the spirit receives when forces that are not understood are played with, or when knowledge is used to test power, to challenge nature, or to cause harm. This is not myth, it is experience. History, religions, and sacred books speak of spiritual marks. The Bible speaks of marked houses, of visible and invisible signs. The same occurs in spirituality. There are people marked by arrogance, by spiritual violence, by unnecessary tests of force. And those marks do not disappear by changing discourse or religion. They are carried. They are dragged along. In some cases, they are even inherited. That is why many tragedies begin with small arguments, with egos clashing, with raised voices, with people who do not know when to be silent, when to listen, and when to stop. And those arguments end in ruptures, divorces, prisons, illnesses, or deaths. And then the question arises, why did this happen to me? This is one of the answers that almost no one wants to hear. There are also ancestral burdens, people who carry the consequences of acts committed by family members, ancestors, or previous generations. And that is where the true function of the conscious in Gangulero comes in, to break, cleanse, close, and allow the person to begin again. But that new beginning is not done without steps. It is not done without processes. It is not done by skipping stages. That is why there are preparatory steps before major consecrations, because no one can carry a force they do not understand. Spiritual knowledge is a blessing, but it is also a responsibility. There are those who use it to cause harm because they enjoy it, because they want to test power, because they want to dominate. And there are those who receive it with humility and use it to do good. Time is what ultimately marks the difference. All mistakes teach. Even the mistakes of the past shape who we are today, if we have learned from them. This message does not accuse. It does not condemn. It does not point fingers. It explains. Because understanding why things happen is the first step toward not repeating them. Spirituality is not a marketplace, nor an annual convenience. It is a path. And paths are walked with coherence, respect, and responsibility. Whoever decides to follow a letter should do so with consciousness. Whoever decides to change houses should do so with respect and clarity. But no one should deceive themselves into thinking they can jump from one place to another without consequences. Because the Spirit remembers everything. Sincerely, Professor José Alberto Espinosa Barrero. Tata Nkisi Nkiza Luyente Kongo. Onichanga Oba Oloyu.